Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the MUFC MPB YouTube channel with your host today, Anil Kandola, bringing you all the latest when it comes to Manchester United and what hopefully will be a very window indeed, whether it's incomings or outgoings. We will be right across absolutely everything. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Sam Pilger, an absolute legend when it comes to Manchester United stuff, content, books, you name it. He has pretty much covered all there is to do on Manchester United. Sam, firstly, Happy New Year. I'm sure it's okay to say Happy New Year, still 7 days in, but I hope you're well. And how are you currently finding following Manchester United?
Happy New Year to you too. Yeah, I think we could still do that in the first week. Well, it's changed. I mean, I have to keep reminding myself it wasn't a win at Anfield. It sort of felt one. I think actually Gary Neville referred to the victory too.
Yep,
It
yep.
was probably the most, could very closely have been one, but so yeah, and that followed off the back of four defeats. So it's funny how you can put a positive spin on things. United haven't won any of the last five games, but we're feeling a lot more confident after going to Liverpool and getting that draw after an absolutely miserable Christmas with those four defeats, three in a row in the league without even scoring. So yeah, I mean, we go to Arsenal on Sunday in the FA Cup. Southampton next week in the Premier League when that resumes with a lot more confidence. In short, as I think Ruben Amarin himself said, look, if United can do that at Liverpool, the best team in England at the moment, arguably in Europe, then why can't they do that on a weekly basis? So that's for him to solve. But yeah, feeling a lot more confident.
Absolutely. I think probably for me anyway, the most enjoyable thing about Sunday against Liverpool was Ruben Amarim's post-match interviews, the look of disappointment on his face, not because Manchester United didn't quite get the victory, but because he was wondering where them performances were in all of the games that you've just referenced to. And of course, I think it's very clear now to Ruben Amorim and not only him, his backroom staff, the fans, and everyone who follows Manchester United. There needs to be a busy January, whether, as I said at the top of the show, incomings or outgoings. I assume anyway that Ruben Amorim will want to see a lot of changes. So before we get into the players potentially who will leave Amorim's camp, what can you tell us about the incomings? We'll start with a certain Randall Kolo Muani. Obviously, he's been linked now with Manchester United, Tottenham, I think's in there, and also Italian superstars Juventus. Where are we with this one? What have you heard? Are United potentially favourites for this one, or is it not quite as simple as we hope?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't say favourites. I think I think the two priorities in this window are a striker, a source of goals, because that is so needed. Obviously, two at Anfield, but the three games before that, United didn't score against Bournemouth, Wolves, and Newcastle, and have struggled now for 2.5 seasons, really. With goals, still minus goal difference. So a striker and a left wing back, especially for his system. Dalot performed admirably on Sunday, but that's really needed. So yeah, Moani as a striker, there is interest there. I think the loan market, obviously, in January, United have done that a couple of times. Most recently with Wout Weghorst, that didn't go so well with, I think it was no goals in about 18 Premier League games. So I think, yeah, I mean, there won't be any, I don't think in terms of a striker, there'll be a permanent deal, but Moani is of interest to United. They are looking at the loan market. They're looking what they do. Of course, as I will say probably more than once, on this podcast, that a lot will depend on outgoings. How much can be freed up in the monthly wage bill. Obviously, he's talking Marcus Rashford. If a club, very unlikely that will cover all his wages, but some of his wages, that frees up some money to bring in a number nine, because obviously Xerxes and Højlund haven't quite worked this season. So Moani, yes, there is. United are interested. Whether that will happen, I don't know. I think if the competitors are Tottenham and Juventus, we've got a good chance. But yeah, I mean, from his own perspective, are we as attractive now? I suppose. Not sure of the rules. If he's played in the Champions League, if he can play in the Europa League, I'm not sure of
I
that.
believe he can in the Europa League. I think it would be a bit of a problem if it was still Champions League, but of course, Manchester United don't have that worry
I'm
anymore.
not in it. Okay, so yes, so United can offer him that at least, and certainly not a challenge for title.
Mhm.
Tottenham can't either. So I don't know. We will see it. And I suppose that puts him in a window, maybe trying to earn a permanent move. There's a feeling. Look, United are desperate now. So I know there was some reaction. Oh, Mawani, we should get better than him, but that is a good signing. He's got pedigree, and it hasn't been a huge success for him at PSG. But as we're seeing, almost like with Jadon Sancho, it wasn't a great success at United, doing better at Chelsea. Players just need a new environment.
For sure, for sure. And I think one individual there that fits into what you have just described in regards to exploring the loan market, potentially considering the financial strains or the supposed financial strains Manchester United are currently in, is a certain Victor Osimhen. Now, of course, this is a massive name across Europe, currently out on loan at the moment, and Manchester United fans seem to be a little bit excited about this one. But is this blind hope, or is there a little bit more to it than just that?
Well, I mean, he's an interesting one, isn't it? I think it's mostly blind hope, to be honest. But I think there's an outside chance. Obviously, he's on loan in Turkey, so that would depend on him being recalled by Napoli and being loaned out again. So, I mean, as that happened with Weghorst as well, having two loans in the same season. Um, I mean, he's an interesting one as well. He was the hottest property in European
Yeah.
football, and
Yeah.
it begs the question: what's he doing in Turkey? I mean, that was not the. He's doing well in Turkey. I mean, I think it's like 12 goals in 15 games, so he's not disappearing there. But this was not the move anyone thought. He sort of been parked there for a year. I think. I mean, again, I think that would be certainly only a loan rather than a permanent deal. But it could work for both parties. I think that's less likely. I think Mawani is more likely in this
Yeah.
window.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Another individual, I know we're rattling through them, Sam, but because there is so much to get through, we're going to try our best to cover everything the Man United fans want to hear about. Nuno Mendes, strong possibility for this window potentially. I know you said at the top of the show his position is particularly of interest to Ruben Amorim and especially the way he wants to play. Would he be open to joining Manchester United? Could this be potentially another big name that could come through the door at United? Or again, is this a little bit of blind hope, sadly?
No, I think there's a good chance. I mean, so much is dependent, as I said, on if players go out the door. If Casemiro, if Rashford, if Anthony get out the door in any sense, especially Casemiro. Rashford would likely be alone. If Casemiro goes out the door, then that is £300,000 a week saved that can be put towards somebody else, and possibly a fee as well. Rashford, I don't think would be less of a thing. Anthony less, but so a lot depends on outgoings. United have to have some outgoings to get some ingoings, and as I said earlier, I think left wing back, as well as Dalot performed, he's a right back, and he hadn't been playing well. So that was a bit of an outlier, that performance of Anfield, but it shows what he's capable of. I think to give United side some proper balance, a left wing back is absolutely essential. Obviously, Malacia, I don't think is good enough. Luke Shaw would be a peak Luke Shaw, but the injuries I mean, he's barely played for United in a year. I think sadly, are we going to see a prime Luke Shaw going back and down the left flank? Unlikely, and I don't think United can rely on that. So I think a left wing back is an absolute priority for this window to give the side more balance, especially in the summer. Nuno Mendes, obviously a player who's played for Amarin at Sporting. Again, like Mawani, hasn't quite been a huge success at PSG. Decent. So I think that there's a chance of that. Obviously, it's a player Amarin knows, likes, would fit perfectly into his system, has played in his system before. It's a bit like Ten Hag with all the Dutch players, obviously, but that's fine. You trust who you know. And I think that would be a good, Portuguese international, 33 caps or so. I think that would be, I think that is possible. But we'll have to see if United can shift some space on the wage bill.
And you lead me very nicely there, Sam, onto the next part of the podcast, which is, of course, where we will focus on potential outgoings. And I don't think there is any other place better to start than a certain Marcus Rashford. It is very disappointing that the way this has come about. I think I said last week on this very podcast that there was an element of irony how he said in the interview with Henry Winter that when the time does come that he leaves Manchester United, it will be very amicable, very respectful, and above board. And you look at the situation now where genuinely, can anyone even remember what his last game will be if he does move in January? It's a massive shame the way things have turned out. But ultimately, we're here and there's not much we can do about it as Manchester United fans or even people within the media. What can you tell us about Marcus Rashford then? Who are favourites to sign him? I got a bit of information a couple of days ago that despite a couple of clubs liking Rashford, admiring Rashford, there isn't really any concrete interest in regards to really making a move happen. I know it's early in January, we're still in the first week. That can all change on deadline day, never mind in the next couple of weeks. But where are we at with Marcus Rashford and is his departure inevitable?
I don't think it's inevitable. I hope it's not inevitable. I talk as a United fan as well as a United writer. I would deeply hope that they could solve their problems, that he could stay, and we could get back to the 2022-23 Rashford, who scored 30 goals, of course, and a local lad. It doesn't look good, really. I mean, he's been out of the squad. Well, he came back from Newcastle, but then wasn't even brought on. I think I think in terms of I think there is interest. I think there's strong interest from I think United don't want to loan him to a Premier League or sell him to a Premier League side. Obviously, especially not in January, that could be embarrassing. I understand there's interest, and there's been reported interest from Borussia Dortmund, from AC Milan. Those two teams obviously could not afford his 350,000 plus a week wages. United would have to cover some of that. I think, the Jadon Sancho template, United could possibly repeat, and Borussia Dortmund are obviously thinking of that. Is taking a player who's fallen out, giving him a shop window for 6 months, and then obviously with Sancho, we're going to get very little money for a sort of troublesome player. United got 25 million, or they will do next year or this year from Chelsea. The same sort of perform the same act with Rashford, give him a shop window. Because the problem is, if you want to sell him in, and he is an asset, and he's 27, arguably could still have his best years ahead of him, sadly, but possibly for another club. He'd be worth 40, 50 million pounds. But if he's not playing week on week, and it's obvious you want to sell him, then he's not going to be able to demand a top fee. So United are in this strange position that they were with Sancho, of wanting to possibly give him a shop window. But I think the problem is, it's all very well finding somewhere else for him, but this is a 27-year-old at what should be at the peak of his game with enormous pedigree. Premier League pedigree. He's done okay this season. He hasn't been a disaster this season. Obviously, he hasn't been able to do much in the last month because he hasn't played, but he has scored goals. I think you talk about his last performance. Did he come on at Arsenal? Possibly not, but he scored, obviously. I think the last time he started, he scored twice against Everton. So he scored, within 60 seconds of Amarin's first game. So I think United need to be careful. I think in an ideal world, they solve this and get him back to his best. But I think that the decision likely has been made that they're going to try and part ways. But if you get rid of a player with Rashford's potential, who has scored 30 goals a season, then the question is, who comes in? How do you replace that? United can't hack away with Højlund and Xerxes for another six months. So, you want a fit and firing Rashford, but there was interest from Saudi Arabia. He's not interested in that, quite rightly, at this stage of his career. So they will invite interest and see what happens. It might go late, really, like all these things do. We're still early in January, so wait and see.
Absolutely. You can't ever predict what happens in the future, and I can't even predict that my lights will stay on. So we're back. Look at that, just like magic. Sam, sorry about that. But as I said, you can't ever predict what happens in the future. But I think one thing that quite a lot of people could have potentially predicted is Casemiro going to Saudi. Now, this seems to have legs to it. This doesn't seem like a bit of a rumor down the rumor mill. This seems, as I say, something that will happen. It's quite the opposite of what you said when it comes to Rashford in terms of the stage of where he is in his career. Casemiro achieved absolutely everything and then some with Real Madrid and has had a fairly successful time at Manchester United. I think the first season that he came into the club, there was an argument to say he was probably Manchester United's most important player at that time. It's crazy how things can turn out. But as again with the Rashford situation, we're here now with Casemiro. Saudi Arabia this month, he could prove to be one of the very valuable assets when it comes to making some sales and some funds for Ruben Amorim to spend in January. What can you tell us about Casemiro to Saudi Arabia? Do we understand a ballpark fee for him potentially? And how likely is this one to happen?
I mean, there's been talk of a fee which United would be absolutely delighted at, something like £30 million. If they get that, I mean, they would think all Christmases have come at once. I mean, I think they'd be just delighted to get his wages
Mm.
off, which are, and his contract as well. His contract. I think he's got another 2.5 years on his contract, over £300,000 a week. So if United could get his wages and get off the books and a fee, they'd be absolutely delighted. There is strong interest from Saudi Arabia. I do think that's the obvious place for him. I do think the slower football there. I think he could go on and enjoy, 2 or 3 good years at the slower pace of football. I think the Premier League, sadly, is beyond him now. I think we've seen that against Newcastle recently. We all winced to see him and Eriksen in the starting lineup. Newcastle ran through that midfield, and his opening game as well. I mean, it's interesting. Amarin chose Casemiro for his opening game at Ipswich with Eriksen as well. Same thing happened. United were fortunate to get a draw though. There, if we remember it, just a couple of very good Onana saves. Ipswich had the better of that game. So, and then since then, he hasn't. I mean, actually, probably my fondest moment at Casemiro is him celebrating Ahmad's winner on the pitch with him. If you remember, he had a bib warming up as a substitute, and he threw himself on the pitch with some great photographs. So that's about it. That he didn't even come on there. So I think that Amarin hasn't chosen him much other than those games we've spoken about. He clearly doesn't fancy him. You thought, oh, can you get the best out of him? For his physicality, his mobility, he's a busted flush for United, really. Now, that was obvious under Ten Hag last year. For Amarin, he's clearly not going to suit his football. I don't think he's quite rightly sees a future for him. Yeah, as you mentioned, I think United fans will remember Casemiro fondly. He came in, he was fantastic in that season. It's actually forgotten how much he missed quite a bit with suspensions and so forth. But he really, he scored in the Carabao Cup final. Yeah. He absolutely brought some composure and class to that midfield. It came as a shock last season how he fell off a cliff because he really did. Although he scored a few important goals, and this season it's been similar. We thought, could he come back? No, not really. He's come to that age. I mean, it's a shame actually because his Real Madrid colleagues, Cruz and Modric, have remained at the top of the game, mid to late 30s, or did so. Casemiro has peaked a little bit earlier, but as I say, I think United fans will remember the good more than the bad with Casemiro, and United would be delighted if they could shift him in this market.
Absolutely, and I think one player who may not be remembered for as many good moments is a certain Antony. Now, the less said about this situation, the better in regards to the transfer fee that Manchester United paid for, the lack of anything really in terms of output. I know he had a couple of good moments. He scored in his debut. He scored a very important goal, I think, against Barcelona. So there are a couple of good moments, of course, at Liverpool in the cup as well, that kept the game alive for Ahmad to eventually get onto the winner. But I think that's about it. I don't actually remember any full 90-minute performances from Antony where I thought he was even worth half of the money that Manchester United paid for. And if there was ever a transfer to summarise Manchester United post Alex Ferguson, it probably would be Antony. But now, looking forward, looking ahead, it seems very clearly he is surplus to requirements, even under the new management. What can we expect with this individual? I know you mentioned him very briefly earlier ago, but let's go into it a little bit more. Is Antony expected to go on loan this season? What club is more advanced for him, if any? Where are we at with Antony?
I think there is interest in Antony. I do think, I mean, obviously he is, he did well at Ajax. He's a Brazilian international who played for Brazil at the World Cup. Although he's been a bit of a disaster at United, as you said, there have been moments where he played quite well. He could certainly perform in a lower league. There's been interest recently, just reported Olympiacos and Greece, Turkey. I think, I mean, obviously, with Martial's gone there, Palestri, to Greece. I think he is of that standard. I do think, as you say, and you talk about the symbol of the waste. I mean, it sounds £85 million sounds better than €100 million. But what is more shocking, if we look back, if you'll allow me, is that Ten Hag knew him. He was his player at Ajax. He can't, you might think, oh, well, I've scouted this player and I've watched this player. Ten Hag knew exactly what he was and what he could do. He was his player. He saw him in training, so he has no excuse. And I look back and I'm absolutely in shock. Such a 1 foot player that just always cuts in and then doesn't do much. And when you look at the success the United had on at Anfield, it was beating the man outside. Garnacho with the equaliser, beat the man outside. Just I know wingers now are inverted; they come inside more, but Anthony just takes it to new extremes. Yeah, I mean, there was interest that when Amarin came in, and that could he be a wing back? Because he always gave. I mean, he always put effort in. There was no doubt about that. Could he actually be used as a wing back? Now, Amarin used him against Bodo Glimt and a Premier League game as well. So he's done that a couple of times, but Anthony just hasn't done it.
No.
I just think, I think that was in the period where Amarin was trying a lot and saying, would this work? I think against Bodo Glimt, it was Malacia and Anthony as wing backs. That clearly didn't work. I mean, that didn't last the game there. So I don't see he's made his mind up on him, and United would be delighted if they could loan him out, but that might have to wait till the summer.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case with every player potentially on the cards for Manchester United, because we're going to be in for a long time as United fans. But one individual who I think it's fair to say does split opinion at the moment is Joshua Zirkzee. Now, of course, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that I speak for a lot of Manchester United fans who think that he is just simply not at the level required. But you saw the reception he got at Anfield, you saw the support, and I think that was almost a realisation from Manchester United fans that the booing of him when he was dragged off against Newcastle before even half-time, I think was a step too far. He's still a human being at the end of the day. I couldn't care less about how much money he's earning to get that treatment when realistically it was a little bit too harsh with over 70,000 fans almost singing at the fact that you have been taken away from the game was too far. But we're here in this situation now. Sam, I just wanted to get what you've heard on this, because there are quite a lot of conflicting reports out there at the moment. Not conflicting in the sense of interest potentially from Juventus, but more so where Zirkzee is in regards to his future at Manchester United. What have you heard? Have you heard, are you under the understanding that he wants to stay and fight for his place? Or do you think maybe that Newcastle game was almost the tip of the iceberg when it really comes to how Xerxes feeling? What can you tell us about this one?
Well, I think obviously I was delighted that the United away support gave him some support. I felt very sorry for him. I really don't think it was personal. I think there was just huge frustration. Obviously, United were losing 2-0. It was the cheer, I think was the cheer for Mainu coming on. Was it, thank God he's going off because he's awful? I just think it was a cheer that a change is being made after half an hour. And things are bad if there's a sub being made after half an hour. I think the cheer wasn't like, thank God you're getting subbed. It's more, thank God a change is being made. And then I think subsequent boos may well have been boos about the cheer, if you see what I mean, people doing that.
Maybe, so
look, there's no, I'm not trying to excuse the behaviour. It was wrong, but I don't think it was as straightforward as I think other United players have had worse experiences. I think it was just a real frustration, and it wasn't about him personally. I think he, we've seen the clips of him playing well for Bologna. Serie A is a slower paced game. I think that suits his game. There's interest from Juventus. There is in January. There's interest to take him back to Italy. I think personally, he's still young. It could be the making of him, the experience against
Mm.
Newcastle. I mean, the football gods were cruel against Liverpool because I thought, there's always like he bobbled the ball to Harry Maguire. I thought a confident striker should have
Should
had a
take the
shot.
chance.
I
Absolutely.
thought he should have because
Absolutely.
even when he squared it to Harry Maguire and he bobbled the thing, and there were two players on the line. When he first advanced into the area, there wasn't, and I think he should have shot. You can understand why he cut it back. His confidence was low, but when I saw him advancing, I thought, my God, what a story! What a story! Xerxes is going to get the last minute winner. He didn't. He didn't even shoot. I also think, and we'll never know, and no one's provided definitive proof that he may have just been offside. And I think that's the only time you want a United player to be offside.
Yeah.
Please, don't.
I don't think I could have handled that ball going into the back of the net. It would have been shades of Arsenal
I
away last
know.
season where Garnacho scored that goal and I thought I was in Wonderland and we ended up conceding
Yes.
2 goals and
Oh, I
losing.
know. Well, I did think United have been spoiled for dramatic last minute winners, Liverpool in
Yeah,
the cup and Ahmad at City.
maybe.
It was
Yeah.
like, that would be
You're
what,
asking
three
for
or
too
four a
much.
year? They happen once every 10 years. We'd have got three in a year, but yeah. I think, look, again, I think there was a Ten Hag signing. The more you look at him, the more you think he's not a number nine. He's not a number nine at all. He
No.
doesn't have pace. He's not really. He's tried and he scored 3 goals and a couple of assists, but you just think, what does he do? What does he bring to this team? You know, and you see him against um, Newcastle, where he was played off the number nine. Obviously, he was booed and he looked awful. He was giving the ball away there. He lasted half an hour. You just can't see him really. He doesn't look like a Ruben Amarin player. But I'm fascinated to know this was a Dan Ashworth, this was a Ineos, this was Ten Hag. What did they think he could do in the Premier League? Look, some signings work, some signings don't, but he just looks completely unsuited to the Premier League. I hope I'm wrong. He seems a nice guy. Everyone wants him to do well after that, the booing, but I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this again will be another situation where it does leave you scratching your head a little bit, Sam. We're very nearly at the end of our chat today. I just wanted to get your opinion on something, Sam. Ineos. Now, we spoke quite a few months ago now. I can't believe where the time flies. And we were certainly, let's say, optimistic, shall we say, of the things Ineos could potentially provide. Now, of course, a new ownership, especially over the footballing operations, would bring great hope to Manchester United fans when Ineos took over. Now, I'm not going to be around the bush. I think I'm very disappointed with what I've seen so far. I think several situations, not just with the financial cost cutting, getting rid of all sorts of bonuses and Christmas parties and swapping them for M&S gift vouchers. There's been all sorts, but I think in terms of what they've been employed to do, the footballing operations, I am very underwhelmed. I think we were promised the best in class in all departments, hence the employment of Dan Ashworth. We all know how that one went down. And considering this is a board that took their time sacking Eric Ten Hag, you can only imagine how difficult the situation was with Dan Ashworth at board level. So it really has made me question, and it has made me almost hesitate to have that optimism going forward with Manchester United and even Ruben Amorim. He needs funds, he needs the backing, and this ultimatum that they gave him of it's either now or never, for me anyway, with this season, it's essentially set him up to fail because how can you expect someone who's got a completely different philosophy, a completely different understanding and idea of how the game should be played, throw him into a car crash of a football club at the moment and expect him to turn results around? I'm not saying they're necessarily going to give him the sack, but when you set a manager up like that, I don't think it is giving him the tools necessary to make the changes that are needed. Sam, I've expressed how I feel. Take it away.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, it's a year's anniversary. It was Christmas Eve in 2023, so it was just over a year's anniversary of Ineos being in control of the football operations at United. I mean, look, we can talk as much as we like. 13th speaks for itself. That's an embarrassment for Manchester United. Sixth would be an embarrassment. Fifth, United should be in the top four. Should be challenging for a title. Maybe that's too soon within the first year, but 13th is dreadful. And there was talk of relegation last week. I think that's been sort of put to bed with the Liverpool performance. But yeah, I mean, I think that there have had to be cuts, and I know, but it does look a bit Scrooge-like. I know that the former players' society at United are possibly losing their money. The stewards, the Christmas party, it does look awful, and it looks awful as well when you're paying for your own failure with Eric Ten Hag, when you're paying millions and you're saving small amounts. I mean, this though is not Ineos's fault. This is years of financial problems that have happened under the Glazers. Ineos are sort of like shielding them from the criticism. No, but very few people talk about the Glazers now. It's Ineos. I admit it looks bad. There's always a story about United, but if United were second and challenging for the title, it would still be a story, quite rightly. But it looks even worse now because you're looking Scrooge-like, and then you're failing on the pitch. I think looking across the year, clearly keeping Eric Ten Hag was a major failure, and that's damaged this season and will continue to reverberate. I mean, I remember before the cup final, the decision had been made to as I understand it, to sack Ten Hag. The Guardian even, I remember, ran with the story that it was a fact. It didn't happen. And the argument there was, well, surely Ineos are not going to make their decision on one game. And I thought, well, no, that's not good business sense. These are smart business people. They're not going to make the decision on one game. Well, guess what? They did. United beat City in the cup final. There was an outpouring of, and I think some United fans will look back and think what we were doing, but there was quite a lot of support for Ten, surprisingly, looking back. So it wasn't an unpopular decision. It wasn't an unpopular decision at all. But if you look back, it had 2 years, and it's just really, really damaged this season because it failed under Ten Hag again, and then you get in Amarin, and as you say, he doesn't have the tools. He doesn't have the players for his system. He plays a very distinctive system, 3 at the back, wing backs, and United simply don't have the players for that. We've seen that. There's evidence of that. I'm hoping that Liverpool can break that trend. The Liverpool performance can break that trend. So yeah, those are the negatives. I think there are positives. I do think there are positives. I think the decisiveness of getting Ruben Amarin, I think, is a real asset. And if United are patient and stick by him, I have real belief and hope that he can be a huge success. I think we've all been won over by his charisma and his communication, which is something Ten Hag didn't have. I mean, I've seen a lot of United managers, and we all have recently, and he didn't have much charisma or ability to bring fans with him. But Amarin certainly does. And he's been talking like a fan recently. He's only been there a matter of weeks. He's been talking like a fan. He's not sugarcoating stuff. He didn't even, he sort of said, yeah, we're in a relegation. Let's embrace that. I think United have look what he did at Sporting, and literally did beat Pep Guardiola with his Sporting side. United have got a young, upcoming, brilliant young manager. And I think we've all been, on the whole, impressed with him since he arrived at Old Trafford. He's made mistakes, he will. So I think they acted decisively there. They knew they'd made a mistake with Ten Hag. We didn't have Ralph Rangnick, an interim manager, 6 more months of treading water. These are the changes happening now. So I think that's a positive. I also think the transfer market in the summer has so far been a positive. And these were all Ineos signings, with the exception of Joshua Zirkzee, who we talked about. I think Ugarte has been a huge success against at Liverpool. I think he looks a great player. I think Yoro, again, that cameo, the sliding tackle, he's looked very good whenever he's played. Mazraoui has arguably been United's best player this season. De Ligt, I mean, I don't know. Is he a massive upgrade on Harry Maguire? I'm not sure. I'm interested to see more. You do think, why have Juventus let him go? Why have Bayern Munich let him go? He's only 25, though. I think he's a good, solid player. I'm not sure he's a massive upgrade. He didn't cover. I mean, the penalty was just one of those things. He did commit himself too much to Gakpo,
Yeah,
obviously. So I think he's been a solid signing. If you remember, De Ligt missed the 2 games against Bournemouth and Wolves, and he was missed there.
yeah.
So I think he's been a solid signing. So I think at the moment it's like 3.5 out of 5 good signings.
Mm,
So um, I would say Ineos with their decisiveness of Amarin and the signings they've made has been a plus, but there's been huge negatives, as I said, as well. So let's hope in a year's time we're not 13th and we've got more positive stuff to talk about.
for sure. Let's hope we can break into that top 10, Sam. Thank you thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. You know, like I said at the top of the show, you're brilliant. You're absolutely across everything when it comes to Manchester United. So thank you once again. And as he said, I'm sure, hopefully anyway, when we do speak again on this channel, it will be a lot more optimism.
My pleasure. Good to speak to you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And of course, thank you to everyone who's watched today's episode on the MPB YouTube channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, all of that jazz. And be sure, in the unlikely case, if you don't already, follow Sam on X. He is, as I said, right across everything Manchester United. Please be sure to join me again when I'm joined with another brilliant guest. As I said just a second ago, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. It really helps this channel grow and bring on brilliant guests like Sam in the coming days. Let's hope, anyway, things take a turn for the positive and the better in the second week of the January transfer window. I've been Anil Kandola. This has been the MPB YouTube channel, and join me again next week.